Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you are doing well. Let's talk about one of the most widely hated and consistently panned bands in all of modern rock. That would be Muse. Frontman Matt Bellamy and the gang assembled this group back in the mid-90s, and for a time they were one of the more well-respected groups out there, bringing together elements of alt-rock and art rock, some splashes of metal here and there too. And sure, while they may have been a little derivative of Radiohead here and there, and records like Origin of Symmetry, not the greatest album in the world, still a fairly good project though, and Muse were one of the more modern, respectable rock acts to come out of the UK. I mean, it's that simple. Like, they've enjoyed many years of relatively positive reception, but that reception is kind of petering out as the years draw on, and I thought it would maybe be worth it in this video to kind of go over why. Things really started to take kind of a turn around the late 2000s with the release of the album The Resistance, which is a record that, while it is not the most well-received, I do kind of respect the ambition behind that album, with Muse embracing all of these rock opera-isms and pulling them off relatively well much of the time, and coming through with a pretty political and socially conscious message through the album too. And even though I took positive things away from the album, maybe it was kind of a concern and a red flag that people like Glenn Beck, for example, were kind of picking up on the LP and like seeing something in it, thinking that the record's statements and views were something that aligned with his own, something that at the time Matt Bellamy and the band had to like publicly disavow. I sort of attributed it to Glenn Beck just being kind of crazy, not necessarily a fault in the messaging or anything, but as Muse has continued down this rabbit hole of just experimenting with different music genres and also continuing to just like preach with these political angles in their songs, the less merit and creativity and focused, pointed, coherent messaging I'm hearing on these records, be that The Second Law, or Drones, which had an oddly militaristic title, skipping over the sort of 80s themed simulation theory, and then on to the kind of end of the world, dire themes and vibes coming off of their latest Will of the People. It's a pretty disappointing run of albums, disappointing enough, I think, to turn the tide of fandom against any band. I don't even think Radiohead's reputation would be doing all that well if they came out with those four albums back to back. It's to the point now with their latest record where not only is the messaging stinky and obnoxious and just not of good quality, but even the song and musical ideas are somehow getting worse, like with the title track essentially being a ripoff of Marilyn Manson's Beautiful People, but we're kind of swapping it into Will of the People. And like I noted in my review of that album, not only is the political messaging for Muse getting obnoxious as a constant theme, it's like they don't really have anything else to talk about or focus on. And it's not that it's a bad thing to talk about. Obviously, I'm somebody who's pretty politically minded, and I don't mind hearing socially conscious messages in music generally. In fact, I typically embrace it. I mean, just look at my review back catalog, but it's something that Muse isn't even good at, despite the fact that they just consistently do it. You would expect that with practice and with consistency, you would get great at something. Like, in the many years it's been since The Resistance, Muse should be writing some of the smartest, most hard-hitting, and most mind-expanding dissertations and commentaries on modern society in rock and popular music, because they don't shut the fuck up about it. Yet their commentary continues to be so bland, so non-specific, so surface level, to the point where you just don't really even have an idea of what the heck it's directed at. Like, yeah, I get that you think society is really unfair right now and not good for your average person, but why is that? What are we directing this unhappiness at, other than this non-specific, non-named, no-face symbol of power? What does it represent in your music? Who the heck knows? They don't really get into it. And when you actually look at the band's behavior and actions, it sort of makes you have to wonder, like, is this all just a ploy? Is this all just like, you know, window dressing? Is it an aesthetic? Does it actually mean anything? Recently, there was a bit of controversy that went down at a Malaysian music festival where the 1975 stirred the pot because Matty Healy decided to engage in a bit of on-stage, you know, man-on-man love and kissing, which, given Malaysia's political distaste for any public displays of homosexuality, put the band in hot water, put the festival in hot water. So that's one side of the spectrum there. And it's interesting because, yeah, the 1975, they do put socially conscious messages in their music. Matty Healy is always kind of commenting on some sort of like social or political thing in an interview or two. Yeah, he's problematic. He's a bit of an ass. He shoots from the hip. We understand that about him. We know that. But historically, to his credit, he is a guy who is not shy about, you know, sort of throwing his opinion out there on politics, on social stuff, even if it isn't going to be well received. The 1975, though, as a brand, not seen as like a super political band, generally speaking, and yet they do this. But then Muse, on the other side of the spectrum, who in their music can't shut the hell up about politics, have been given kudos by the same festival for, removing a song from their set list, which may have been seen in bad taste. Look, I'm not saying Muse like should have gone on stage and had like, you know, a multi-dude orgy or anything like that to prove a point. But considering the boundaries that Matty Healy pushed on stage over the restrictions, like, you know, you can't even get a song through. It's kind of sad and it's kind of pitiful. You can't walk the walk that you're always talking when it comes time to. Look, I was already kind of questioning the validity of the passion behind the statements in the band's music, given just how vague and non-specific they were. Now seeing stuff like this, I mean, it just sort of, you know, feels confirmed. And as I said earlier, year after year, album after album, Muse's sound and writing is just getting increasingly more and more annoying. It's boring, it's obnoxious, it's out of touch. I've said something like this before, I'll say it again. The band seems to be like a public psyop to make sure that people don't think political messaging in music is cool, or even rock music is cool. In my mind, currently, Muse stands as a billboard to ward people away from rock music. Like, if Muse is your first rock band or exposure to rock, you might think, man, this rock music stuff, it's not that interesting. I might avoid any and all rock bands, period. Because this one left such a bad impression on me. So yeah, unfortunately, Muse kind of sucks. And at this point, that's not even really a controversial statement to say, because with each record, everything about what they do is just getting worse and worse and worse. And honestly, at this point, with it being so many years since they kind of began this turn, I don't know if there's like any upward build or improvement from here. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Leave them in the comments. Why do you think Muse sucks? Do you think Muse sucks? Do you think they're amazing and mind-blowing and one of the greatest bands of all time? If so, would love to hear why. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Muse, blah, forever.